Well, welcome back to Contrastly. My name's Simon Plant, and today we're going to look at image planning. So, a bit of a strange title for a video. I just thought we'd do something different this week. I was thinking about what techniques I could show you, and I thought, well, it'd be quite nice to show you the way that I work. We're all going to be very different the way we approach our images and photograph, etc. But I thought I'll just show you how I go through when I open an image, say within Photoshop like this one, the things I look at and the way I kind of plan to go forward with the retouching. It's not a rocket science, or there's not a precise way that I approach this every single time. Every image is different. Some people might make an overlay and start sort of marking up what they want to do here and there and what have you, and it looks great, a great way of working. But it doesn't kind of it's not the way I work. I tend generally to, like with this image, tend to go by step by step. I've got a rough idea maybe what I want, but it's all really guided by how I want the viewer to view the image. I look at the picture, I decide what the most important parts of the picture are, and those are the parts that I want to accentuate. Anything else that doesn't add to that, I try to remove or certainly avoid being too obvious in the image. So we're in Photoshop, and now with this image I shot this in a very dimly lit room, as you can probably tell, and it was something like 3200 ISO, so it's quite noisy. And I'm not really worried about bringing out too much detail anywhere, because I quite like the mood of it. But it can cause a few problems if we try and sort of do too much lightning or anything. It's going to really fall apart quite quickly. So that's one consideration we need to consider before we start working on the image. The focal point of this is really the guy's expression and his gesture. Everything else is really just supporting that image, and it's not really the focal point. So with that in mind, the first thing I would probably look at doing is looking at cropping this down slightly. We don't need as much space around the top of his head there, like so. And bear in mind, the more we crop into it, the more that noise is going to be apparent. It doesn't bother me. I used to shoot a lot of pictures on film with very, very fast speed for the noise effect, so it doesn't really worry me too much. We also perhaps need to bring this in. Now, I do like a little bit of space. I like this dark area here and the way it graduates up, so I don't want to sort of crop it right in here because I think we lose all that. So I'm going to leave a little bit. This side as well, we could look at bringing this in to here. Let's just press enter and just apply that. I'm not convinced, so I think it won't hurt for now just to leave that bit of window showing through there. It adds, I think, perhaps to the image a little bit. It's not super sharp, so it's not like it's blaringly going to drag and be distracting, drag your viewer's eye away from him. Again, it's kind of a supporting piece in the image. If it was really, really bright, that would be a problem, but I don't think at the moment, for now anyway, we need to worry about that. I quite like leaving that little bit of window down here. I should also point out, when I crop this, I'm not actually deleting any pixels, so I can always come back and readjust that and get more of the image back if I want to. And you do that by making sure that this box here, delete crop pixels, isn't checked, so make sure that's unchecked, and then you can always go backwards and forwards a little bit. So that's my first thing. Now sometimes I'll leave that towards the end of the cropping, other times like now, I think it's better to do it now before I start making any more adjustments, particularly on this image. Also need to look at the actual room itself. We've got light coming in here, and the window light's quite nice and soft, and that's great. It's lovely on his face. It adds a lot of character to the image. The colour of the room, though, means it's got this like terracotta red hue, so it's casting that light's bouncing in that room off the walls, and it's creating an overall kind of warm reddish tint. Again, if that bothers you, you would have to look at maybe correcting that. And if I just zoom in a little bit, you can see even his skin has got that red tint. Now we could maybe look at adjusting that. The way I would approach that, let me just zoom out a little bit if I can, is we could grab a curves adjustment. Okay, we'll go into the red channel, And down here, this is the shadow end of the curve. We could look at adding a little bit of green. If I drag this across, you can see more and more green comes in. Now I'm just really looking to maybe take some of that off the skin. That's where we started from. If you look at his face here, as we bring it across, we can take some of that red out just of that area. I'm going to add a control point here on the curve, so it means it's only affecting the darker tones, like so. There's before, there's after. That makes it a little bit more neutral on the skin, and I think I actually prefer that. I'm not going to worry about it too much, but what I don't want to do is take any of the red at the rest of the image. So what I'm going to do is get a paint bucket tool. There's other ways of doing this, but this is probably the easiest way, and with black is in the foreground, like so. Highlight the mask and just fill that with black, so that takes away, white reveals, black conceals, that takes away the effect. And now we can just get a brush tool here with white in the foreground, and we can just paint that effect back in where we want it. I'm going to just have a flow of about 30%, and I'm just going to paint it over the skin here and in some of his clothing and hat there. A bit smaller. So there's before, there's after. So it's just selectively taking a bit of the red out of the skin there, like so. Before, after. Okay, so we've still got that nice warmth coming off the wall. We don't take it all the way out because it's very a natural thing to happen, you know. But if you've got a bright green wall with sun coming in, it's reflecting green onto your subject's face. It's not always a great look. Another thing is always that I always do is I always name my layers. So I've named that adjustment layer color cast skin. I'll then highlight the rest of the layers that are in that stack and just lock them together. Doesn't always need to be done, but if you're doing any precise masking, sometimes it's very easy just to kind of nudge this mask out of alignment with the rest of the image. So if it's locked, it can't go anywhere, which is a good thing. So there's our first adjustment for the skin. So again, always keep focus on what the most important parts of the image are. As I said, in this image, it's the guy's face. Now, as humans, we naturally, if we look at an image, we naturally will go to faces first, apparently. So if there's a picture of somebody, even very small in an image, we'll always tend to lock onto a face first. So we're already kind of ahead of the game here, because hopefully anybody looking at this image will automatically go towards his eyes and his face. So, but, you know, obviously remember, whatever you're retouching, you know, look at the image, decide what is the main content, the main subject or content of the image that you want the viewers to look at, and base all your retouching and your adjustments around that. So again, no, we're not really worried about this here, but I do quite like the graduation, as I said. This isn't too bright, so if it was, I would be looking at maybe removing that or toning it down. The next thing I'd probably look at this image is maybe some dodge and burning, which can obviously really make or break and really accentuate the image. So again, there's several ways to do this, and I've done a couple of videos in the past on different methods. One of the easiest ones is to make a curves adjustment layer. All about the curves today, and we can just start off by maybe darkening this curve, like so. We can always adjust this. Okay, I want to fill this again with black, so I'll get a paint bucket tool with black in the foreground. There is other methods, as I said, and that's going to obviously take away that. So I'm going to call this one burn, or you can call it darken, or anything you like. And then going to create another curves adjustment and do the opposite. I'm just going to just lighten the curve a little bit. We can always adjust it. And again, paint bucket tool with black, take that away, and call this one dodge, or you can call it lighten. Again, just going to link all these together, stop them moving anywhere. So at the moment, we've created two layers. I'm also actually going to highlight these adjustment layers and add them to a group. So create new group button at the bottom, and I just call this one ADJ, short for adjustments, and it just keeps my my layers all tidy there. So let's go for the dodge first of all. I'm going to select the mask there. I'm going to get a brush tool with white in the foreground, which will help us reveal that adjustment layer. I'm going to drop my opacity, my flow, sorry, down to about 10%. And again, most important thing in this image is his face, so I want to maybe accentuate that further. And I'm just going to start to lighten those parts here. And this is one of the fun parts of Photoshop. I suppose it's because it's very much like painting, and you can just come in and highlight different areas, like so. I'm not going to go through all this because it'd be very boring, but you know, we just accentuate those wrinkles on his shirts a little bit, so forth. And the same with the burning. Highlight that layer, and now we're going to reveal any darker bits. So anywhere you want the image to go dark or darker, you can just use this to darken those up. I'm not too worried. I'm not going to try and darken his face or eye there, but don't necessarily need to see his ear roll. Darken up the shirt a little bit. And you probably think when you're doing this, it's not making a lot of difference, but when you start to turn them on and off, you will see, like so, that coming together quite nicely. Same with the highlights. So it's always best just to build it up, low flow or low opacity, and just build it up slowly. So let me just carry on with that, and I will come back to you when I've done a bit more. Okay, so I've finished brushing the dodge and burn layers, and I've stuck the two layers in another folder called DNB, dodge and burn. So there's before. There's after, before, after. As I said, if we look at these layers, the masks, if I just click on Alt or Option, click on it, you can see the brush marks there. Sometimes it's a good idea to go in afterwards if you're worried about there being brush marks on your work. Maybe the brush wasn't quite soft enough. You can always come into Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and just blur that brushwork a little bit. Here's the burn layer, mask. Same again. So, and if you want to obviously make it a little bit darker, you can come into the curves there and just do that, like so. So a very adjustable way of working. And let's just zoom out a little bit. So there's before, there's after, and you can really kind of push the viewer's eye into certain areas. I've darkened some areas downhill along the leg and the arm here, because you don't really need to see. You know, it's not about seeing everything; it's about seeing the things you want your viewer's eye to see, and the things that don't matter you can hide up. So there's a little bit more. So gradually we're building the image up as we want. There's before, there's after. Quite subtle, really. Nothing too much. The next thing I might want to do is just go back and have a look at this crop again. Maybe I'm just still trying to decide in this window whether to cut some of this window off or not. Don't know. It's one of those personal things. Some people will say, yeah, crop it. Other people say, no. And I'm still not convinced. I think I'm going to leave it up to the window edge for now and maybe come back. That's the beauty. As long as you don't delete the pixels, you can go back in and have a play around. One last thing I should mention about these dodge and burn layers or any curves layers, if you find by making an adjustment the colours get a little bit more saturated or shift somewhat, you can change the blend mode of these from the normal there. You can change them to luminosity, and in theory you shouldn't get any color shift with them, although I have found times when this has got worse, so it's worth checking. But generally, if you put it on luminosity, the adjustment will still stay intact, but it won't shift the color. So another little tip there. So just as light and certain colors can draw attention into our subject, so can sharpness and softness. So anything that's slightly sharper in the image will draw the viewer's attention. So again, we can use that to our advantage. Now, if I sharpen all this image, seeing it's quite noisy to begin with, it's going to get much more noisy all over, and I don't want that. And also, I don't want it sharp all over. So what I'm going to do is just selectively add some sharpness to the guy's face here and hat, maybe bring out some of these textures. To do that, I'm going to just turn off these adjustment layers. Now this image is a smart object, but I need to rasterize it to be able to do what I'm going to do next. Otherwise it's going to just update the whole image file. So I'm going to right click and go to, oops, not that. going to right click and go to rasterize layer like so. Command and Control J to duplicate it. I'm then going to make this layer a smart object again. Somewhere. Where has he gone? To convert to smart object. Like so. This means we can obviously keep going back in and keep adjusting it. I'm going to go to Filter and go to Sharpen and use good old Unsharp Mask. And again, I want to sort of put the cursor over the eye here. You need to play around with these adjustment sliders, but amounts I'll put on about 150% for now. Radius, you don't want to go too low because it's going to go hardly any effect at all. But if you go too high, it's going to go quite frankly horrid. So there's a sweet spot. Remember, you can always come back in and readjust it. I'm going to go for about But 1.8 pixels looks pretty good. Threshold, leave that down low and just have a play around with the amount slider. But I don't think we're far off there. But 139% looks good. Okay, let me just zoom in so you can just see what's going on. There's before. There's after. So that's really kind of bringing out some of the wrinkles on his nose here. But as I said, don't want it to affect the whole image, so I'm going to add a layer mask. Hold down the Alt or Option key and click on the layer mask, and that will add a hidden layer mask, black layer mask, so it's hiding the effect. And then we can just simply come in with a paintbrush, if you wish, with white, and apply that sharpening to the areas we want it only. And not the whole image. So the hat and his face there. I am down to about 9% there. Let's bring that up a bit. So bring some of the wrinkles out in his shirt. And you just go over the image like I'm doing, but obviously with a bit more care. There's before, there's after. So it just brings out some of that character and that ruggedness to him. If we wanted to, we could even add some to the wall here. I will do it just to show you, again, how this makes the image pop. I don't dislike that, actually. It's quite a nice bit of texture. I don't think it's too distracting. So we'll leave that in. Just have a look. I won't... No, not going to do anything on this side. I think that will be distracting, but I don't think here it looks too bad. So there you have it. So that again, that's going to add. Oh, I don't know. Actually, I might change my mind again on. Yeah, let's just drop that back a bit. Actually, from there. I think in hindsight, it probably was a little bit too distracting, but certainly demonstrates how good effect that makes of the image. So there's before, there's after. Again, it's quite subtle, like so. But it just brings out some of his stubble and stuff without ruining the whole image too much. So I think that's about as far as we're going to take it for now. So let me just group these so you can see what's going on. So we started off with this image, and obviously we cropped it down, and then we've ended up doing a few adjustments to correct the colour and to drive the viewer's eye to the area you want them to. One last thing I would probably do with this, and you can either do it in Lightroom if you use Lightroom, or you can do it here, is add another curve, a darkening curve to the image, like so. And probably fill that with black, the mask with black. And then we can come in and just, again, maybe just paint the edges of the image down, just to darken them down a little bit. Like so. There's before, there's after, and then that just again keeps the viewer's eye in the middle. But don't go too far, because obviously you're going to lose some of the detail. But normally I'll always end up doing that if I feel it needs to be done, just to constrain the viewer's eye to the parts again we want them to go. So there we have it. I hope you've kind of learnt a couple of tips here of how you can sort of look at your images in a different way. Obviously when you're composing them, and also when you're retouching, it's always got to be with the end result in mind, which is where your view, what you're trying to say in the image. And in this image, I really wanted the lighting on the guy's face and his expression to really stand out, and the adjustments we've made today all help support that. Or at least I think so. You might have other ideas, but I think that works quite well. So there's before, and there's after. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to catch you on the next one. Cheers for watching.